Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our invited guests and speakers with a huge round of applause. A very good morning to Her Royal Highness Queen Diambi Kabatuswila, Honorable Chancellor, invited guest speakers, other dignitaries, faculties, and students. We gathered here today to be a part of a change movement affecting our region and Mother Earth. In 2016, the Balipara Foundation embarked on an ambitious journey to restore forests across Assam's elephant country, a belt stretching from Udalguri district all the way to Sonitpur along the Arunachal Pradesh-Assam-Bhutan border. With the current mission to plant 10 million trees, provide livelihood to 30,000 people, and creation of 11 billion natural capital, the Balipara Foundation organizes the Eastern Himalayan Naturenomics Forum, which aims to bring together stakeholders from diverse backgrounds and perspectives to debate pressing issues and opportunities for action in ecology, economy, and community-centered conservation. Assam Royal Global University is proud to host panel discussions which are part of the 12th Eastern Himalayan Naturenomics Forum scheduled on the 26th and 27th of November 2024. The theme for this year's edition is the future of the Third Pole and Eastern Himalayas. I now request Chairperson Academics Professor A.K. Buragohai to deliver the welcome speech.
Her Royal Highness Queen Diambi Kabatuswila, distinguished dignitaries, esteemed guests, members of the faculty, and my dear students. A very good morning and a warm welcome to all of you on this momentous second day of the Eastern Himalayan Naturenomics Forum. It is my great honor to address this august gathering as we continue our collective dialogue on sustainability, collaboration, and the harmonious coexistence of humanity with nature. Your Majesty, we are deeply privileged to have you here at Royal Global University. Your tireless advocacy for cultural preservation, community empowerment, and sustainable development serve as a beacon of inspiration for all of us. As a global leader, you embody the values of unity, resilience, and cultural pride that we aspire to nurture in the leaders of tomorrow. At this point, I'd also like to acknowledge the visionary leadership of our Chancellor, Dr. A.K. Pansari, whose commitment to excellence and inclusivity has positioned the Assam Royal Global University as a hub for the transformative education and global collaboration. It is towards this, it was his forward-looking vision that inspires initiatives like the ones we are about to propose, which align with the shared goals of fostering global partnership and nurturing future leaders. As part of this significant occasion, we are proud to propose two landmark initiatives that reflect the enduring bond between India and Africa. One, the Royal Diambi Scholars Program. This prestigious scholarship program, named in your honor, will offer full academic support to 10 exceptional students annually from the Democratic Republic of Congo and African nations and other African nations. It symbolizes our commitment to creating opportunities for global education, empowering young minds, and building stronger ties between our regions. Two, the Royal Afro-Indian Mosaic Festival. This annual celebration of the vibrant cultures of India and Africa will be a platform for cultural exchange and collaboration. Alternating between Royal Global University and a partner African venue, it will showcase the rich traditions, shared aspirations, and the artistic brilliance of our peoples. Your Majesty, these initiatives stand as a testament to the values we hold dear: diversity, unity, and a commitment to creating a better world through education and cultural exchange. Your support and endorsement of these programs will undoubtedly amplify their impact and inspire countless lives across continents. Today, as we focus on the theme evangelizing the third pole and the Eastern Himalayas, we look forward to your insights, which will enrich our understanding and motivate us to walk with greater resolve towards sustainable solutions to our planet. Once again, I extend my heartfelt gratitude to Your Majesty for gracing us with your presence and wisdom. I also thank all our distinguished guests, members of the faculty and the students, for their participation in making this forum a platform for groundbreaking ideas and meaningful collaborations. Together, let us move forward in building a legacy of global unity, sustainability, and hope. Thank you.
We would now like to felicitate the esteemed panelists with tokens of love which are symbolic of the rich cultural heritage of Assam, namely an eri shawl, Ohomia fulam gamusa, a hofura, and some other symbolic tokens of love from our end. With your permission, I would like to introduce the respected members of the panelists to our esteemed audience. Her Royal Highness Queen Diambi Kabitisula Elikiaho Foundation, Democratic Republic of Congo. The traditional queen of Bakwaluntu people in the Democratic Republic of Congo is a philanthropist and environmental activist. She founded the Elikiaho Foundation, aiding over 40,000 homeless children. Queen Diambi advocates for women's rights, environmental conservation, and sustainable development globally, promoting unity across continents. I request Honorable Chancellor Sir and EVP to kindly felicitate Her Royal Highness. Ruma Devi ji is the president of Gramin Vikas Evam Chetna Sansthan, GVCS, has trained 22,000 artisans in Rajasthan's Thar region. She promotes tribal women's handcrafted products, linking them with international fashion designers. Madam has been recognized with the Nari Shakti Puraskar 2018 and featured on the cover of India Today magazine. I now request Honorable Vice Chancellor Sir to kindly felicitate Madam. Mr. Anil Chaudhary is an advisor, independent board director, and former MD and CEO of Schneider Electric India. Mr. Chaudhary has over 30 years of experience in energy and infrastructure. Passionate about energy efficiency, he worked on climate change, infrastructure, and access to energy. Sir has received France's Chevalier de la Légion d'Honneur for strengthening Indo-French relations. I now request Director Growth and Strategy to kindly felicitate Shri Anil Chaudhary. Dr. Ashok Khosla, an internationally recognized environmentalist, founded Development Alternatives, the world's first social enterprise for appropriate technology. He chaired the UNEP International Resource Panel, and the IUCN awarded the OBE UN Sasakawa Prize and the WWF Duke of Edinburgh Medal. He has contributed to global environmental policies and programs for over 5 decades. I now request Registrar Administration to kindly felicitate Dr. Ashok Khosla. I now take this opportunity to introduce the moderator of today's session. Mr. Rituraj Fukan is an environmental activist, writer, and climate change advocate from Assam, India. He is the Secretary General of Green Guard Nature Organization and COO of Walk for Water. Mr. Rituraj is also a climate reality leader, mentor, and a district manager with the Climate Reality Project India. I now request Dean Academics to kindly felicitate Mr. Rituraj Fukan. I now request Registrar Academics to kindly felicitate Madam Mala S. Ramadurai. Ma'am. I now request the moderator, Mr. Rituraj Fukan, to take over the session themed Evangelizing the Third Pole and the Eastern Himalaya.
Thank you so much. It's a great pleasure to be back here in Royal Global University after having been here for the TED Talks a few years back. And it's a pleasure to again have the honor of welcoming our esteemed panelists for the Eastern Himalayan Naturenomics Forums. I also did the welcome introductory press interaction with the Honorable Queen. So I'm going to start our question today with Her Royal Highness, Queen Diambi. Your Majesty represents the people of the Democratic Republic of Congo, as well as Brazil, two of the most mega diverse countries on Earth, where people's lives are intertwined with the biological diversity, just like our Eastern Himalayan region. And what are the evolving challenges to indigenous people and local communities at the front lines of climate change? That is the first question for you, Your Highness.
Greetings, everyone. First, before I can answer a question, let me thank you, first of all, for inviting me, founder and president of the university. Thank you so much for your welcome. Thank you to all the faculty members. Thank you to the academic team. And thank you, of course, to the students without whom the university would not be a university. And thank you for the moderator and all my colleagues on this panel. And also, I have to express my deepest gratitude for the immense gift I've just received that is really an answer to all my prayers and all the work that I do. It's to create bonds and friendship, and actually even deeper than friendship, it's about reconciling the human family. And coming from Africa, coming from the home of humanity, because oftentimes we are still so colonized around the world that we view Africa still through the lenses of the colonizers and oppressors. We have still a common colonizer and a common oppressor, and yet we still use his or her lens to look at each other. And especially Africa has suffered the grief of an immense stigma, negative stigma of the propaganda that was done for centuries to demonize African people, to make them look like they were stupid and idiots and savages. And so it's so important that we break down all these stereotypes. And I know you too have been victim of the same, and it was really all in the design of making us, of weakening our minds, weakening our will to be self-determined and to take in our own hands the ability to orient ourselves for a better future for ourselves. So I always want to bring this correction, because out there you still have no information about your home, the home continent of humanity. You have very limited information, and oftentimes it's very negative. And as you will be welcoming 10 African students every year in this school, which is such an amazing gift and a crowning of a lot of my efforts to seek friendship and reconciliation with my human family, you have to understand the continent your ancestors come from. It's a continent where we lived majority of our human life. If we are today about 400,000 years, give or take, with the information we have on our DNA, the human genome, and archaeological evidence, we are about 400,000 years old as Homo sapiens sapien, modern humans. And we lived only in Africa for 330,000 years of those 400. That means that majority of our human experience only happened on that continent. And when we started to leave, and you are now the descendant of those who started to leave Africa, the first wave about 70,000 years ago, and the second wave about 40,000 years ago. So you are the descendant of all these people. But they were in Africa for 300 and something years before they left. And they did not leave Africa empty-handed. They already observed the sky and mapped out the star systems for hundreds of thousands of years. They knew what plant to eat and what plant not to eat. They knew how to deal with water. They knew how to navigate through their environment. They knew how to relate to each other. They knew how to regulate their societies. They were civilized people. So when they left with a lot of tools that enabled them to then become you and civilize the rest of the world. So I want us to make sure that we remember that. And I also want to make sure that we remember that those people just didn't vanish, that Africa today is still vibrant in a lot of creativity, in a lot of knowledge, ingenuity. Just like you, they have a desire to self-determine. But we are up against something really huge. And I mentioned colonization. Colonization is not over, because colonization may have taken a different form through international organizations like the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, and all kinds of a mechanism of sanctioning, of coercing a lot of countries that are the providers of their resources for their development. So we still have to remember that, and it's very important. And still today, Africa is the home of mathematics. 25,000 years ago, we are doing mathematics in Congo. Africa is the home of medicine. Africa is the home of architecture and a lot of the technology. Without fractal mathematics, we are not having computing science today. Binary code system comes from Africa. So we need to give our mother Africa back her nobility. And it's a very good place as being in Royal Global University for me as a queen to speak, because this name means that we're making kings here and queens here. And what is a king or queen? Is only a person who's responsible for the wellness of themselves, but also the wellness of their community. So to really quickly answer your question, is like most of the people living in Africa live in rural areas. So when we are the first in line facing all these difficulties concerning the climate and also the damage that we do to the environment. I have to stress that we're not always able to really discern between environmental issue. Climate is one thing, and environmental destruction is another. So climate, we live on the planet where climate always change. Now we can say that some of it has our contribution in it, but overall, this is a planet where climate always change. 10,000 years ago, the Sahara Desert was not a desert. It was a green pastures and people lived there, and many civilizations were flourishing in the desert that is today the desert. So what it is about climate change, we have to learn how to adapt. We have to have policies and mechanism to ensure that we are capable of facing the challenges that will come with a changing climate. And then, of course, the environment is what I talk a lot about, the biodiversity, as you are faced here in the third pole with a lot of challenge, destroying your biodiversity. But without biodiversity, there is no bio-life. We are biological people, so we have to continue to understand and use our culture, use our ancestral culture to rebuild the relationship that we have with the environment surrounding us. Because if our ancestors gave reverence to plants and animals and soil and rivers and mountains and sun, it was not just because they were stupid and they lacked of knowledge. It's exactly because they were smart. It's exactly because they were wise that they made sure that our environment was sacred and was to be treated with reverence. And then if we had integrated those concepts into the economy as they did before, we wouldn't be facing these kind of challenges today. So that's what I encourage my people to do, is to continue to press on and recuperate the attitudes and posturing that they had when they were respectful of nature. Because if you respect the ocean, if you respect the river, you do not pollute it. You have to find other means of acquiring the ends without polluting, because you can be smart, as I said. You can be smart, and smart, and an example is you can create an atomic bomb when you're smart. But being wise is another thing. Being wise is refusing to build one. So even in terms of our development, and when we talk about technologies, it's not only the solution that you have to look for, but it's the consequence of your solution as well. And this has not been taken account into in the Western paradigm. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Your Highness. That was really powerful. I just came back from COP29 in Baku, where the global developed countries basically gave up their common but differentiated responsibilities and have surrendered their historical liability for the damage that they have caused to our indigenous people and local communities across the world. So that was very important. I started my journey as a climate activist in the South Pole and been across the North Polar region, where the indigenous communities have lived sustainably with nature, and across the third pole, of course, where nature is so important to us. Our lives are intertwined with the biodiversity. But now we are feeling the challenges of having to cope with these great changes in the quick changes in the climatic conditions, which we did not create. So that was a great answer, and that is the reason why we are having this session for evangelizing the third pole, because people talk about the Amazon, people talk about Sahara, people talk about the polar regions, but not about the third pole, where nearly 40% of humanity lives and are dependent on the great Asian water towers for water, for biodiversity. All our cultures, we have grown up with the biodiversity. Our culture defines what lies around us in nature. So my next question will be to Mr. Anil Chaudhary, and how do you envision a sustainable energy mix for mountain communities in the third pole region, where some remote communities still remain off-grid? By the way, with Schneider Electric, I was one of the Yodhas, green Yodhas, when the program started many years back. So thank you for that leadership.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody, and thank you very much, Balipara Foundation and Royal Global University, for this wonderful morning and to be with the young minds today morning. And very happy to be here with fellow panelists and eminent personalities here. You know, from the time the mankind has developed, and you have, really put a lot of emphasis on how was the world seen from different angles, including energy. Energy has been an integral part of the development of the mankind and the economies and the businesses. Now, for sure, somewhere on the route, the equation changed. Because in lust for development, in lust for accelerated development, the way we should have probably used the energy while achieving those developments at the same time protecting our planet, protecting the biodiversity, protecting all that green Saharas which we have lost that touch. And it's only we as mankind has to be blamed, nobody else than that. And the only people who can correct it is the mankind only. When we look at the way the energy has been utilized with the West taking the lead with fossil fuels and accelerated fossil fuels, and when we started working in energy in early 80s, if you cannot produce more, you were not considered as a good company, or we can install more thermal plants or more fossil fuel plants and all those gas plants and all. But what happened, because then there was equation of those plants which was there, the equation, the way you could produce energy was very limited, and you needed high, long transmission line to transport the energies from various region to other region. And this is where the Himalayan region, the third pole, remain somewhere a little bit disconnected from that energy consumption which were happening. If we take the equation of that, in this region, it's average about 350 to 400 units per capita consumption, compared to India average of about 1,200, 1,300, whereas the world, the developed nations average is anything between 6,000 to 10,000 units. And this, anyway, when we translate into development, there is a huge opportunity. Because for development of mankind, for development of nation, energy becomes very important. This is also a great opportunity for the third pole and the Himalayan region. Because now there are technologies, now there are solutions which have been proven, which has passed all the tests for renewable energy, be it solar, rooftop solar, be it micro hydros. I'm not talking the word of hydro or mini hydros because there are complexity and you have ecological impacts of those, but micro hydros, which are run by propels and all those things. The micro grids which can be developed in this region to take up this consumption per capita of energy to almost double. And the equation of energy for development is that if you spend $1, 1 rupee on energy, you will see economic and development of about 12 to 15 rupees in that region. Imagine that if we have all our remote villages, remote areas connected on microgrid, having self-sufficient energy coming from solar, micro hydros coming from the wind wherever it is possible, and wherever it is possible to connect with without compromising our green corridors, having transmission line to get the grid power is equally good as well, but not at the cost of cutting a lot of trees and all things. And this will bring another angle to this, because this region, if we look from the point of view, they're sitting on one of the futuristic opportunity of business economies. The developed nations are today challenged. COP29, you come in because 300 billion, not sufficient, and they want more and more money to see how we can create carbon sinks in the world. And when we look at our country, and especially maybe the equation is a little bit on the higher side, we have 22 trees per capita, compared to almost like 430 to 440 trees per capita in the world. This is an opportunity for us to look at this, because how we can get to the business of the carbon trading. And this is becoming, carbon financing is becoming a big, big opportunity for this region. There are young minds here. You can, work on that, equations and all. Startups in the carbon trading, carbon financing and all could be the future business which comes in. It is energy, but then you have the startups in that particular domain which can come in. And this is what will take this region to being a developed region, but without compromising on the the climate without compromising on the whole nation of the requirement of the forest and balancing of biodiversity, flora and fauna, and all keeping those intact, in fact, going on that. So that will be what will be, the way to look forward. And I see a huge opportunity as we become more and more, aware. That's first thing. More and more technologies are available. More and more, opportunities could be there for startups in these particular domains of microgrids, in terms of, carbon trading platforms to be created, and carbon sinks to be created in this region. And that's a big opportunity for us.
Thank you, sir. Yesterday I was on a panel which was about community conserved areas and the importance of upgrading them to other community managed protected areas to reach the 30 by 30 target of the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. And I think carbon pricing or carbon finance could be one great way of getting the community to be involved. And talking about community involvement, we have somebody here, Mr. Ruma Devi, who has really revolutionized how women can be empowered. आपने जो राजस्थान में किया है तो हमारे दर्शक को बताइए आप कैसे एक राजस्थान का गांव से हार्वर्ड तक आपका जो विजन है फैशन डिजाइनिंग से शुरू करके आपका लीडरशिप तक कैसे लेके गए हैं.
आज के प्रोग्राम में पधारे हुए सभी मेहमानजनों को नमस्कार, राम राम. वैसे मैं पश्चिमी राजस्थान बाड़मेर से आती हूँ. बाड़मेर पूरा डेजर्ट एरिया है. यहाँ पे पहाड़ है, उधर रेत के टिब्बे हैं. रेत के टिब्बों के अंदर दूर दूर जैसे यहाँ पे घर बने हुए हैं वैसे वहाँ पे भी है. यहाँ पे इकट्ठे लोग रहते हैं. वहाँ पे एक एक ढाणी में दूर दूर 1 किलोमीटर बाद में एक घर आएगा, उसके बाद में एक घर आएगा, ऐसे रहते हैं. तो वहाँ बारिश ज़्यादा नहीं होती है. साल भर में एक का दीवार बारिश होती है तो 3 महीने का खेती का काम रहता है, बाकी टाइम फ्री रहते हैं. सुबह से शाम ऐसे ही निकल जाती है, रोज़गार का कोई साधन नहीं है. तो ऐसे ही एक ढाणी में मेरा जन्म हुआ 88 में. और जब मैं 4 साल की थी तो मेरी मदर की डेथ हो गई थी और उसके बाद में मेरा स्कूल छूट गया था. वहाँ पे पानी की बहुत कमी थी तो मेरे पास में बैलगाड़ी होती थी और मैं पानी लाने का काम करती थी. जब भी समय मिलता दादी के साथ में बैठ के कसीदाकारी का काम सीखती थी, क्योंकि कसीदाकारी का काम यहाँ पे भी जैसे होते हैं वहाँ हर घर में होता था. पहनने के लिए कपड़े भी वो खुद बना रहे थे. माँ अपनी बेटी के लिए कुछ ऐसा अच्छे से बना के देती थी, क्योंकि पहले फ़ोन नहीं होता था. जब बेटी को ससुराल में माँ की याद आती तो वो अपनी सिंदूक खोल के माँ के हाथ का बना हुआ प्रोडक्ट देख के ही तसल्ली करती थी. आजकल तो फ़ोन हो गए तो उसकी ज़रूरत नहीं है, बात हो जाती है. तो ऐसे ही मेरी दादी के साथ में बैठ के मैंने सीखा और 16-17 साल की उम्र में मेरी शादी हो गई. शादी के बाद भी घर की आर्थिक स्थिति ठीक नहीं थी. तो जब मेरा बेबी हुआ तो उसको सांस लेने में प्रॉब्लम थी और उसको बचाने के लिए अच्छे हॉस्पिटल नहीं ले जा पाए, उसको नहीं बचा पाए. तो मुझे लगा कि ऐसी ज़िंदगी मुझे नहीं जीनी. कई नेगेटिव थॉट आए कि ज़िंदगी ही ख़त्म कर लूँ. लेकिन उसी समय मैंने सोचा ऐसी ज़िंदगी से हार मानने से अच्छा है मैं कुछ काम करूँ. लेकिन मैं गाँव में कभी शहर भी नहीं देखा, घर से बाहर कभी गए नहीं, घूंघट में रहते, वहाँ पे क्या काम करूँगी मैं. तो मैंने सोचा जो महिलाएं मायके जाती है वो सुंदर बैग ज़रूर लेके जाएगी, क्यों ना मैं इनके लिए बैग बनाऊँ. तो जो घर में कपड़े थे उनके साथ में कसीदाकारी का काम शुरू कर दिया. अब बैग की स्टिचिंग करनी थी. स्टिचिंग के लिए मशीन चाहिए थी. मशीन मेरे पास थी नहीं, ना मैं खरीदने के लिए सक्षम थी. एक बार फिर हिम्मत हारने लगी. मैंने कहा कैसे कर पाऊंगी. फिर मेरे दिमाग में आया जो परेशानी मेरे साथ में हो रही है वो मेरी और बहनों को भी तो होती होगी ना, क्यों ना मैं इनसे बात करूं. तो फिर हमने 10 महिलाओं ने मिल के एक सेल्फ हेल्प ग्रुप बनाया. 100 रुपये इकट्ठा करके एक सेकेंड हैंड मशीन खरीदी और वहाँ से हमने काम की शुरुआत की. उसके बाद परेशानियां ख़त्म होने का नहीं थी, क्योंकि और बड़ी थी. हम 10 महिलाएं हो गई थी. 10 महिलाओं के लिए काम कहाँ से आएगा, इतने बैग कौन खरीदेगा. फिर मैंने कहा इसकी मार्केटिंग कैसे करें. तो एक ग्रामीण विकास चेतना संस्थान जिसकी मैं प्रेसिडेंट हूँ, इनके बारे में पता चला. तो हम 2-3 महिलाएं इकट्ठे को वहाँ गए. हमने जाके बोला कि हमारा समूह है, हमें काम की ज़रूरत है, हमें संस्था के बारे में पता चला, तो हम यहाँ आए. तो वो कई समय से वो प्रयास कर रहे थे कि महिलाओं को काम से जोड़ने के लिए, लेकिन महिलाएं आगे नहीं आ रही थी। तो उनको लगा कि ये महिलाएं खुद आके काम के लिए बोल रही है, तो उनको विश्वास नहीं हुआ। तो मैंने कहा नहीं, हमें काम की ज़रूरत है, हम इसीलिए आए हैं। तो फिर सैम्पलिंग का काम दिया, जब सैंपल अच्छे बने तो हमें ऑर्डर दिया, 3 दिन का काम दिया कि ये आप करके लेके आइए। तो वो जो हमें फर्स्ट टाइम काम मिला था, इतनी खुशी हुई थी कि हमारे पास में काम है। हम वापस घर जाके काम पे लग गए और सुबह वापस आए तो उन्होंने सोचा कि इनसे काम हुआ नहीं, ये वापस आ गए। मैंने कहा ऐसा नहीं है, हम काम पूरा करके लेके आए। तो ये कैसे पॉसिबल हो सकता है, 3 दिन का काम एक ही रात में कैसे हो गया? मैंने कहा खुशी इतनी थी कि पूरी रात बैठ के काम किया। तो लगा कि वास्तव में ये काम करना चाहते हैं। फिर मैंने कहा हमारे जो गांव की इतनी बहनें हैं, उनको सबको रोजगार की जरूरत है, कैसे इस काम को आगे बढ़ाया जाए? तो किसी ने बोला कि आप एग्जीबिशन करिए। मैंने कहा एग्जीबिशन कौन खरीदेगा, यहाँ पे बाड़मेर में तो कोई खरीदेगा नहीं। तो कि नहीं, जो मेट्रो सिटीज़ है वहाँ पे है, हैंडीक्राफ्ट्स के बड़े बड़े मेले लगते हैं, वहाँ आप जाइए, जैसे दिल्ली, बॉम्बे, बेंगलोर, ऐसी जगह पे। मैंने कहा बाड़मेर डिस्ट्रिक्ट हेडक्वार्टर तो हम कभी गए नहीं, दिल्ली बॉम्बे कौन भेजेगा? सबसे पहले तो घर वाले नहीं भेजेंगे, और हमें तो सिर्फ मारवाड़ी आती, हिंदी भी नहीं आती है, कैसे लोगों से बात करेंगे? तो मैंने कहा ये तो सपना छोड़ ही दे। लेकिन फिर लगा कि प्रयास करते हैं। तो जैसे तैसे करके घर वालों को मनाया, कटे में सामान भरा, ट्रेन के डब्बे में बैठे और दिल्ली पहुंच गए। 2010 की बात है। यहाँ पे दिल्ली में रफी मारे कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन क्लब में एग्जीबिशन था 3 दिन का, और वहाँ पे 3 दिन में हमारी 10 से 15 हज़ार रुपये की सेल हो गई। फिर हमें हिम्मत आ गई कि अब हमें पीछे मुड़ के नहीं देखना है, नेक्स्ट एग्जीबिशन के लिए अच्छी तैयारी करनी है। यही सोच के वापस गए, गांव गांव गए, घर घर गए, महिलाओं को काम के प्रति मोटिवेट करना शुरू किया, क्योंकि इतना इजी नहीं था कि आप सीधा डायरेक्ट जाके महिलाओं से मिल लो। घर के बड़े बुजुर्ग लोग होते हैं, वो कई तरह के क्वेश्चन पूछते हैं कि आप कौन हैं, कहाँ से आए हैं, पता नहीं है इनको क्या सिखा के जाओगे, कल हमारा कहना मानेंगी या नहीं मानेगी। तो ये इस तरीके के उनके क्वेश्चन होते हैं। तो हमें भी लगता है कि यार क्यों माथापच्ची करें, जो हमारे लिए कर रहे हैं वही ठीक है। लेकिन फिर लगता है कि काम की जरूरत इनको नहीं है, काम की जरूरत हमारी बहनों को है, जो सुबह से शाम काम करती है, लेकिन खुद के लिए 2 रुपये भी हाथ में नहीं होते, वो भी मांग के लेने पड़ते हैं, और मांगने से भी मिल जाए ये कोई गारंटी नहीं है। तो फिर उनके घर वालों को मनाते कि इनको कहीं नहीं जाना पड़ेगा, हम इनको घर बैठे काम देके जाएंगे, लेके जाएंगे, और पूरा दिन का काम करके जो भी दिन में 2-3 घंटा इनको टाइम मिलता है उसमें ये करके देगी। तो ऐसे करते करते धीरे धीरे महिलाओं को साथ में जोड़ना शुरू किया। फिर जो नेक्स्ट एग्जीबिशन था उसमें हमने 10-15 हज़ार रुपये की सेल नहीं की, 50 हज़ार की भी नहीं की, पूरी 11 लाख की सेल की हमने। फिर हम होम फर्निशिंग के आइटम बनाने शुरू किए, बेड कवर, कुशन कवर, कर्टन्स, टेबल कवर, मैट रनर वगैरह। फिर लगा कि क्यों ना पहनने के कपड़े बनाए जिससे ज़्यादा लोग खरीदेंगे, ज़्यादा बहनों को काम मिलेगा। तो यही सोच के हमने अलग अलग जगह से फैब्रिक सोर्स करना शुरू किया। फिर साड़ी, कुर्ते, दुपट्टे ये बनाए, लेकिन वो भी ज़्यादा लोगों को समझ में नहीं आ रहा था कि पहना हुआ कैसा लगेगा। तो मैंने कहा कैसे लोगों तक पहुँचाएं जिनसे वो जाने और अच्छे लगे तो ज़्यादा खरीद पाए। तो किसी ने बोला कि आप फैशन शो करिए। तो फैशन शो के नाम से ही डर लगता था कि छोटे कपड़े पहनना है, ऐसा फैशन शो होता है। मैंने कहा हम क्यों फैशन शो करें? तो उस समय तो हमने मना कर दिया। वैसे मेरे पास में ऑफर भी आया था, अनीता डोंगरे बाड़मेर आई थी और उन्होंने बोला लैक्मे फैशन शो में जाना है, लेकिन उस समय हमने साफ मना कर दिया। और उसके बाद में उन्होंने कस की महिलाओं के साथ में किया, और जब उनके फोटोज़ देखे कि हेरिटेज फैशन शो भी हो सकता है, तो बोला कि नहीं आप भी हेरिटेज फैशन शो कर सकते हैं। तो फिर हमने भी प्रयास किए, लेकिन फैशन शो का मौका इतना इजी नहीं मिलने वाला, सीधा आप डायरेक्ट आर्टिजन के तौर पे जाके फैशन शो कर लो। तो काफ़ी संघर्ष करने के बाद में राजस्थान में, जयपुर में राजस्थान हेरिटेज वीक हो रहा था, वहाँ जाके हमने रिक्वेस्ट किया कि हमें फैशन शो करना है। तो उन्होंने बोला आप आर्टिजन हो, आप कैसे फैशन शो कर पाओगे, यहाँ पे तो बड़े डिजाइनर्स लोग आ रहे हैं, उनके साथ में आप कैसे कलेक्शन बनाओगे। लेकिन वहाँ मैंने जिद किया कि हमें एक बार आप मौका दीजिए। वहाँ से मौका मिला, लेकिन वास्तव में प्रॉब्लम तो ये थी कि कैसे हम कॉस्ट्यूम डिज़ाइन करेंगे, कैसे हमारा कलर थीम लेंगे, कि हमारा कलेक्शन कैसे बनेगा। तो हमने सोचा हम और बड़े एनजीओ से हेल्प मांगते हैं। तो दिल्ली का ही एक एनजीओ था, उनको हमने जाके बोला कि इसमें हमें फैशन शो करना है और आप इसमें हेल्प करिए। तो उन्होंने भी यही बोला कि रूमा जी ये आपका लेवल नहीं है, आप जहाँ फील्ड में काम कर रहे हैं आपके लिए वही बेस्ट है, आप ये जिद छोड़ दीजिए और आप अपना काम करिए। बड़ा दुख हुआ, रोना आया। मैंने कहा कोई मदद करने वाला नहीं है, लेकिन ये फैशन शो मैं ज़रूर करूँगी। जैसा मुझे समझ में आया, कॉस्ट्यूम डिज़ाइन किया, कलर थीम लिया, मेरा कलेक्शन तैयार किया। बहुत घबराहट हो रही थी कि किसी को पसंद आएगा कि नहीं आएगा, लेकिन मैंने कहा मैंने इतनी मेहनत की है, मुझे पसंद है तो लोगों को ज़रूर आएगा। यही सोच के हमारे जो प्रोडक्ट थे वो रैंप पे आए और सारी ऑडियंस और डिज़ाइनर खड़े होकर तालियां बजाई, और वही 5 डिज़ाइनर नेक्स्ट टाइम के लिए कलेक्शन बनाने के लिए बाड़मेर पहुंचे। वहां से उन्होंने कलेक्शन बनाए और उसके बाद में मैं ट्राइब्स इंडिया की गुडविल एम्बेसडर रही। और नॉर्थ ईस्ट का भी हमने 7 सिस्टर के नाम से दिल्ली हाट में एग्जीबिशन किया था, जो मेखला सदर है यहाँ की, उसको खूब प्रमोट किया हमने। तो उसकी ब्रांडिंग ऑलरेडी हो चुकी है यहाँ के प्रोडक्ट्स की। और उसके बाद में डिज़ाइनर ऑफ द ईयर का अवार्ड भी मैंने ही जीता, जिसमें मुझे पेरिस का टूर मिला था। उस दिन मैंने ये सोच लिया कि जब भी हमारे सामने कोई समस्या आती है तो ज़रूर कुछ ना कुछ नया सिखा के जाती है। अगर मेरी उस दिन ये कलेक्शन बनाने में हेल्प कर देते तो मैं डिज़ाइनर कभी नहीं बन पाती। तो जब भी आप लोगों के सामने दिक्कत आए, परेशानी आए, तो आप ये बिल्कुल मत सोचना कि इसका कोई समाधान नहीं है। ये सोचना यार ये तो और इसको फाइट करने में मज़ा आएगा और नया सीखने को मिलेगा। तो यही सोच के आगे बढ़ना है। उसके बाद में मैंने सोचा कि हम नेशनल लेवल पे तो कर ही रहे हैं, क्यों ना इंटरनेशनल लेवल के एग्जीबिशन करें, जिससे और ज़्यादा बहनों को काम मिलेगा। तो सोचा ही था। उसी समय हमारे पास में एक मेल आया जर्मनी से, हिम टेक्सटाइल करके, फ्रैंकफर्ट मैसे में बड़ा टेक्सटाइल का फेयर होता है वहाँ से, कि इंडिया से मात्र एक एनजीओ को हमने सेलेक्ट किया है जिनको हम फ्री ऑफ कॉस्ट बूथ दे रहे हैं। मैंने कहा सोचा था बाहर जाने का, लेकिन सीधा जर्मनी जाएंगे ये नहीं सोचा था। तो लोगों से बात किया, वहाँ का कैसा वेदर है, खान पान क्या है, क्योंकि मैं प्योर वेजिटेरियन हूँ तो मुझे खाने पीने की हर जगह दिक्कत आती थी। तो बोला कि आपको सामान साथ में लेके जाना, तो हम आटा सब्जी मसाला सब साथ में लेके गए। वहाँ जाके एयरबिन घर लिया, रोटी सब्जी बनाया और वहाँ के लोगों को खिलाया। तो बोला कि हमने फर्स्ट बार ताज़ी ब्रेड खाई है। मैंने कहा अच्छा हुआ हमें आटा साथ में लेके आई, मैं भी भूखी नहीं रही और इनको भी खिलाया। तो जो जर्मनी का एक्सपीरियंस था मेरा बहुत अच्छा था। उसके बाद में हमने सिंगापुर एक्सपो, दुबई, श्रीलंका, पेरिस, लंदन, काफ़ी जगह पे फैशन शोज भी हुए, एग्जीबिशन हुआ। और जो 10 महिलाओं से हमने 2008 में शुरुआत की थी, आज 50,000 से ज़्यादा बहनें हमारे साथ में जुड़ी हुई है। इस बीच में कई सारे अवार्ड मिले, क्योंकि एक सबसे छोटा माने जाने वाला सुई धागे के काम से कोई अवार्ड भी मिलता है, मुझे आइडिया नहीं था। जब फर्स्ट बार जिला कलेक्टर के हाथों से सम्मानित हुए तो बहुत अच्छा लगा, और उस सम्मान को सिर्फ सम्मान नहीं समझा, एक नई जिम्मेदारी समझी और उससे बेटर काम करने का सोचा। उसके बाद में महामहिम राज्यपाल जी के हाथों से और जब राष्ट्रपति जी के हाथों से पुरस्कार मिला तो खुशी का कोई ठिकाना नहीं था, क्योंकि दिल्ली जाते दूर से राष्ट्रपति भवन देखते, लेकिन अंदर जाके राष्ट्रपति जी के हाथों से सम्मान लेंगे ये कभी सोचा नहीं था। तो ऐसे ही आज जिस तरीके से आपके सामने बैठी हूँ मैं यूनिवर्सिटी में, मेरी तो 8वीं में स्कूल छूट गई थी। मैंने कभी अच्छे स्कूल के बारे में नहीं सोचा, ना कॉलेज के बारे में। लेकिन जब हार्वर्ड यूनिवर्सिटी से मेरे पास में इनविटेशन आया तो मैंने कहा मैं क्या करूँगी वहाँ जाके। 1 महीना तक वापस जवाब नहीं दिया उनका। एक उनका रीज़न ये भी था कि खुद की टिकट लेके आना है। मैंने कहा मैं 10 लाख रुपए खर्च करके वहाँ जाऊँगी तो यहाँ काम कैसे करूँगी, मुझे नहीं जाना। वापस 1 महीने बाद में उनका मेल आया कि ये प्लेटफॉर्म आपके लिए है और हम आपको इसलिए बुलाना चाह रहे हैं कि यहाँ के जो स्टूडेंट हैं उनको भारत के बारे में कितना मालूम होगा। दिल्ली, बॉम्बे ऐसी जगह पे जाते हैं, लेकिन रूरल एरिया में क्या हो रहा है वो इनको सीखना है, आपको आना है। उसी टाइम मुझे बॉम्बे में जानकी देवी बजाज पुरस्कार मिल रहा था, और जब बजाज ग्रुप को पता चला कि इतना अच्छा प्लेटफॉर्म मिल रहा है और ये जा नहीं रहे, तो उन्होंने बोला हमारे बच्चों को एडमिशन नहीं मिलते, आप जाइए हम आपकी टिकट बनाते। तो वहाँ से टिकट बनी और वहाँ जाने के बाद में 1 दिन का प्रोग्राम था, वो 3 दिन तक चला। तो वहाँ जाने के बाद में पता चला कि वास्तव में मैं कितना अच्छा मौका खो देती। बच्चों ने सुई पकड़ा हाथ में, काम करने की कोशिश की, उन्होंने अब स्टोरी सुनी, फिर भारतीय दूतावास में प्रोग्राम रखा, कई सारी यूनिवर्सिटीज़ के प्रोफेसर लोग आए, और जब उन्होंने यहाँ के सोचा तो उन्होंने बोला कि हम यहाँ से स्टूडेंट्स भेजेंगे, वहाँ पे रिसर्च करेंगे और वहाँ की कला को यहाँ के सिलेबस में शामिल करेंगे। तो इतनी खुशी हुई थी, लेकिन उसके बाद में कोविड आ गए और सारी चीज़ें रह गई थी।
धन्यवाद रूमा जी, आपका ऐसा प्रभावशाली कहानी उत्तर पूर्वांचल के सभी छात्र छात्रियों को प्रेरणा देंगे. But I'll come now to Dr. Ashok Khosla, sir. Sir, you set up development alternatives in 1983, and DA has demonstrated that humankind's choice of technologies, consumption patterns, and production systems must be fundamentally transformed if we want to ensure Earth's long-term ecological security. The world says that we must change, but my question, sir, can we do it?
The short answer to that is yes, but let me first acknowledge Her Royal Highness Queen Diambi and the dignitaries here, the Vice Chancellor, the students and the faculty, and my very charismatic panel members for having brought us to a stage where we can have a meaningful discussion on your question. I took as the central issue that we need to deal with as the first word in the title of this session, which is evangelizing. Evangelizing is a very important term because it implies that we've got a message that we need to get out there. And the terrific opportunity that the so-called third pole, by the way, I belong to the third pole too. I was born and brought up in Kashmir, the other end of the third pole, and I very much belong to the same, how would you say, group of DNA, cultural and physical DNA, that all of us here are. And I'm very proud of that. But I wonder whether we want to evangelize, and I need to get into a little depth in that. The issues that we need to deal with is how do people live happy, fulfilled, and good lives in harmony with the resource base on which they depend, particularly nature, where they are, from where they do not have to emigrate because things are not good. So there's probably none of the three poles of the earth has the word evangelizing built directly, squarely into its thinking, more so than the third pole. This is where the Lord Buddha came from, who was one of the great evangelists for living in harmony with nature. This is where, by the way, in this century, one of the greatest statesmen on this planet, the fourth king of Bhutan, also came from this region. And they were both aspirants to a better life for everyone where they are. To not start colonizing through physical means or through armed means or even through spiritual means or cultural means other places and other people because they felt they were better. Everyone is better, and I think I want to make a point for my fellow aspirants for learning here. I don't like to call you young because I think you are really the teachers for people like me, to think about the fundamentals that Her Royal Highness was talking about, which is how do we acculturate our communities and our thinking and our aspirations for a better world without thinking of teaching other people how to live in five-star hotels and blue jeans and chewing gum. And there's a large amount of aspirations in our lives that we acquire without having any relevance to our own circumstances through the ages that we've inherited from our parents and grandparents, the kinds of ability to live in harmony and in fulfillment with nature. So I just wanted to start off by saying that I have a question mark about, for example, something that my organization works a lot on, in spite of my question marks, and maybe because of its question marks, I'm hopeful that we'll get better answers, and that is something called ecotourism. Now, ecotourism sounds good. It sounds good. It's an economic activity which basically not only brings in good income for the local people, but also looks after the natural resources of the region. But just think about it, when you have eco-tourists, what kinds of contamination they bring into that society. Their patterns, behavior patterns, what they're looking for, what they're searching for, is a very different thing from what the locals need. Now, this is not to say that any one of us shouldn't have an aspiration to live the best possible life in the world. If we have a natural inclination to run a business, a big business, we want to have a natural inclination to do great science, to be able to work in the best universities. There's no reason why you have to do it where there are no universities. But as you can see in this very building where we are, you can't build that unless everyone devotes a certain amount of commitment to it. And I think you can be very proud that you have such a world-class campus here and the ability to actually compete with anyone in the world on thinking about radically different things, about innovating, about creating, and about being able to push the systems of knowledge further. So having given my little bhashan about taking care of the assumptions we make, you know, the Lord Buddha was an evangelist, and his successors went out there and went all over the world, and I think they were a force for good. Many of them brought ways of thinking and ways of living which were good for the local people. And that's a decision that the local people have to make a decision on. They're the ones who have to say, this is good for us. And they don't have to adopt foreign concepts of what is good or what is to be worshipped or whatever. So I want to come back to your question, sir. What we did over the last 42 years was to start by questioning the way so-called development was working in our country, which was dominated by, excuse me, by the thinking of the big government, of big corporations, of big systems, which were embedded in the global economy and which were driving ways of thinking and doing which were not necessarily appropriate for our country, either because they were out of consonance with nature's ability to support them, or they were drawing us into patterns of behavior that were not appropriate for the kind of culture that we had grown with for 5,000 years. So this does not mean that there should be no change. My message is not that you've got to get stuck with the ideas of your forefathers of 5,000 years and live only like that. We are very privileged when we were walking in here to look at the exhibits of the tribal architecture and housing and accoutrements and diet and their way of living with nature. And it's remarkable that you could see a pride in living like that, and there is no reason why we have to impose steel and concrete and big glass buildings on them, because they're not appropriate for their way of life. And now, as I say, you got to be a bit careful that they decide that they want another kind of life, then they should be entitled to find it. But it should come from them and not from the outside. So my organization set out to do 3 things. One was to improve the lives of the last person. For us, the last person turned out, after a lot of study and thinking and doing, the woman in a village household. And for us, anything that she needed was our job to deliver. whether it was better cooking methods, whether it was lighting, whether it was dealing with the animals, whether it was bringing up her children. Whatever she needed was fair game for our scientists to develop. And we did. We became the kings of chulas, which are called jikos in Africa, to help them cook more safely and more efficiently and without having to breathe in huge amounts of horrible smoke. And we started with that, and then we started building new building materials that she could, or their families could, get out of the local resources, mainly mud, compressed earth, and make beautiful, beautiful houses, and long-lasting and durable and safe, but much more important, in harmony with nature. And the kinds of creativity and the kinds of wellness that these bring, excuse me, is quite remarkable, and many of them would be actually quite appropriate for successors to the exhibits we saw downstairs. Then we got into the whole question of livelihoods. The one basic issue that every politician in the world talks about is jobs, livelihoods. How do you create meaningful, dignified, well-paying jobs that allow you to participate in the economy? And we developed a whole range of technologies for creating products that were needed in the urban areas or in the export market, which used recycled or waste materials or ways of using local resources. So we developed a whole range of these. And today, I think in the 40 years that we've been working, we've created something of the order of 2.5, 3 million jobs, which makes a big difference in the lives of a lot of people. So I think one of the things I just want to say is that we've got to be very intelligent about psyching out a particular culture, a particular locality, particular community. If they need water, then you have to figure out a way to get them water, or figure out a way to help them get their own water. And the same applies to energy, as previous speakers stated right now, and the ability to make a safe and fulfilling life. So we've done a large amount of critical interventions, creating jobs, many of them craft-based. A large part of it depends on how you manage the selling, and one of the previous speakers has eloquently shown how you can do that. And we're doing the same with websites, with online marketing. And we feel that that is a way of bringing a connection between a rural producer and a urban consumer. And in fact, of course, you need to go the other way too. There are lots of things that urban economies make, for example, cell phones, which rural people need. In fact, in my opinion, I think we missed the bus, my organization. The most incredible, appropriate technology there is the cell phone. It enables you to get jobs, it enables you to connect, it enables you to be safe, and all of these things are things that people need and should have. We're not going back to the dark ages, we're going into the forward 21st century, but every one of us needs to choose consciously what it is that we're going to do. So that's basically the story of our 40 years. Thank you.
Sir, you have really pointed out the development challenges that each of us face now, and it is really up to ourselves to make the right choices, or perhaps the right choices for our families, our communities. I work very closely with the indigenous communities of the Sami parliament, all the Sami people representing all the Nordic countries. And I find that they continue to embrace their indigenous roots very strongly, while adopting the modern, what the facilities that modern science has to offer. And Your Highness has put out, that we must embrace our past, we must learn from the wisdom of our ancestors. And I have also seen the way the North Europe countries have actually switched very successfully to small hydel power as a sustainable, low impact source of energy. And then, of course, what Ruma ji ने हमको बताया how much important it is to empower rural women for the future development of our country. I'm going to open the floor now for questions. I'm sure a lot of you are waiting to interact with our esteemed panelists, so please go ahead. I can see some raised hands over there.
Kindly raise your hand. I request a member to give the microphone. Yes.
Hello, sir. I'm Mujahid from Journalism and Mass Communication Department. My question is for Ashok, sir. So, as we are a developing nation, country like India, where we want to get our infrastructure built so high, we dream of getting a very good infrastructure as compared to the developed country. So, my question to you is, how do we equate this challenge with the environment, and at the same time, we build an infrastructure so that we compete ourselves with a developed country?
Thank you for a very important question. There's infrastructure and there's infrastructure. You can have infrastructure that destroys the countryside, big, huge roads and bridges and tunnels. You can have infrastructure that heals the local ecosystem. And it seems to me that one needs to differentiate between what you might call softer infrastructure, like communications, and harder infrastructure, like roads and physical infrastructure of that type. The third pole, which is the Himalayas, has suffered from a massive onslaught of road building, tunnel building, and massive how would you say, massacring of the local geological and physical attributes. The number of landslides, the number of avalanches, the number of disasters that is occurring in the Himalayas is growing every year and is a matter of deep concern. So the question is, what is this infrastructure for? We're building 4-lane highways into nowhere because we've got the machines, and the Japanese are willing to finance this infrastructure because their economy has now leveled off. They don't have any use for their machines, and they've got lots of capital. So they lend it to us, and they lend us the machines, and we've got to put them to work. But is that exactly the kind of infrastructure we need? I think we've got to be a bit more critical in designing what it is that we need. So infrastructure, roads, you ask anyone in a developing country and ask them what would be their first priority. They want to be connected. They want a road. But there are different ways to make roads. And particularly in hill areas, in the third pole, roads are incredibly destructive. And if you take the net value benefits of a road, you probably find that most of them actually are negative, that you've actually lost more in terms of cost to the community, to the geology and everything else than, now I'm talking about very generic things, but you know, any mathematician or any economist will be able to do a calculation for you to demonstrate that many of the roads and the big infrastructure projects that we have, including big dams, including the damming up of rivers, have positive impacts, obviously, but huge negative impacts as well. So I happen to be the chairperson of the Global Hydropower Sustainability Alliance. And I know from my daily work in that making a dam is a horrendous scar, wound in Mother Earth, which continues to hurt for a long, long time. And if you want to do this, I think my colleague just now talked about microhydro, local community-based infrastructure. Yes, I think that makes very good sense. It's needed. And telecommunications is a very interesting way to do that. And so are other things. You could also use carrier pigeons. I mean, there's no reason why you can't communicate in different ways using nature and be able to get people what they want. My favorite infrastructure is lighter than aircraft, balloons. Balloons go from one point to another. They carry huge amounts of stuff or people, and they cost virtually nothing. There's virtually zero carbon emissions. There's virtually no real cost. And the way our systems work is that they're all ruled out. We only think about roads and airports and ports as infrastructure, which I think is basically suicidal for a society.
So request to follow up. So just one more question.
If I may, you allow that I want to kind of like add a little bit of onto my esteemed friend here, Dr. Ashok. We have to be honest with you. You know, we are here in a place of learning, facing our future. And we have to accept the fact that we are in front of a major dilemma. And the question you ask is really telling us how do you reconcile or how do you concile development and protection and preservation of nature. And this is, I think, the reason why the Bali Para Foundation is calling us to come together with diverse people to think about how we can do that. For me, I think we need to talk about culture really more than anything, because it's the foundation of how we think about who we are, how we are, and where we are. And the paradigm in which we operate, even now, the paradigm in which we operate is a dominant paradigm of the Western world. Even the simple fact of talking about development is a Western paradigm concept. We've always lived on the planet. We've always provided for our needs. We've always moved around. But we never came up with the concept of development. What is development? We have to be honest that development is a code word for Westernization. When you say development, you're thinking, oh, like Europe, like America, like, this is what development looks like. And so what I'm saying is that if we think this, we have to then ask the right questions. How did they become what they become? They became what they became because they basically plundered the entire planet. They took people's land, people's resources, they completely tore apart nature without ever asking a question. Ever asking the question of the consequences on other people and on the environment that is the source for our livelihood. So when we say we want to develop, we have to ask ourselves the question, is it what we want to do? So it's going to be hard questions that we're going to have to ask ourselves. And what I think is quite remarkable about the work of Dr. Ashok is that we have to start thinking alternatively. And to think alternatively, we cannot think alternatively in the paradigm of the ones who have thought us through this catastrophe now that we are facing, and especially in this region. So we have to address the pink elephant in the room. And we're going to have to be creative because they will not take responsibility, as our moderator mentioned about the past COP. They will not take responsibility and they will not bear the cost of restoration of all they destroyed in order for them to be the so-called developed. We are not to develop, we are to recover We are recovering countries. We are not developing countries. We were fine before. So we have to really put our mindset back in realizing that in the terms in restoring ourselves, we also have to reclaim our knowledge, our culture, to imbue our thinking process, so that in the places of learning like these, you can reassess your desire of being and of sovereignty, but based on a paradigm that you redefine for yourself to say what is appropriate to us. And the way you're going to be putting this in work in terms of your science, how you're going to do your engineering, how you're going to do your science study, how you're going to do your economic structuring. When you think about all these things, you have to imbue that so you can create a new paradigm. Because if we think we're going to change anything with the same paradigm that broke everything, that created chaos everywhere, and we're using those same measurement to measure ourselves into our progress out of this disaster, is going to be quite an issue. So I'm here to encourage you to be bold and to be courageous, to ask the right questions, and to really reclaim your own identity and rebuild yourself based on your past and your past glory, but also trusting that you are capable of getting out of that paradigm and building a new one. Because we, as the collective, what they call us the Global South, they call us we never called ourselves the Global South. We don't call them the Global North. So this is a paradigm again. We need to be able to say, wait a minute, what does that mean? What does developing country mean? What is a development? Development is building and breaking roads and going to pillage everybody else, taking people's land, taking millions of my people in Africa to enslave them. That's how you got there. So are we willing to do the same? At least maybe now they have institutions to talk about human rights now, after they finish pillaging and enslaving everybody and colonizing everybody. Now they're okay, now we're going to talk about human rights. Are we willing to do that? We have to ask ourselves those questions. And that's why I'm so honored to be with you, because I know you have the solutions. But you can only have the solution if you dare to challenge that paradigm. And dare to say, we will build, we will reconstruct, but we will reconstruct differently because we have no choice. Because if we do the same, imagine Africa, if we do the same as Europe, or if we do the same as India, or China, tomorrow the planet is on the floor. If you guys do the same, we are all on the floor. This is an example of what's going on right now. He just mentioned the blowing up mountains and digging, roads in tunnels and dams and all. If we keep doing that, we can cross our capability to live a balanced life on this planet. We also have to ask ourselves other questions. What about our humanity? What's the cost of so-called development on our humanity? I'm a psychologist as well as an economist. And I guarantee you I lived in those countries. And I worked treating people in those countries. And the moral and emotional and spiritual misery that you create for yourself when you put yourself in a bunker of goods and all kinds of consumer stuff, and all you do is work to pay your debt, constantly worried about how you're going to make the next payment on your credit card. I have no relationship with your neighbors. I guarantee you I've been in neighborhoods where you come out, you don't even know the name of your neighbor. So your children are killing themselves. They're suiciding because from the morning to the night, they are put in daycare centers because mothers have to work. Because they didn't respect the women's work in the home. So now women are out there working, but not raising children. So who's raising children? Daycare centers. You have one teacher for 10 babies. I've been there. I've worked with these children. So we're creating a society where we become completely disconnected humans. And at 10 years old, you have a child that says, this life is not good for me. I'm going to kill myself. Imagine when your own future wants to kill itself. Is that the type of society we want? Is that the type of development we want? So we're going to have to ask ourselves the hard questions. And where else can we do that but in centers of learning like these? Yes, we have to acquire some knowledge. But guess what? A lot of these knowledge we acquired, we were the precursors of these knowledge. I invite you to go to Africa and see the type of cities we used to build before we were colonized. Because yes, we did build cities. And all our urban cities were built with fractal mathematics. Why? Because there is a geometry to nature. There are laws of nature, how you build. Not these, humongous cities that make no sense, that have no energy circulating, and even making people sick. Stuck in traffic for 4 or 5 hours. This is development. So we need to be courageous and stop and decolonize our minds and dare to ask the right question. Dare to say, stop. You do not have the right to dictate to us what is right, and especially not now when it's time for assessment. Because now we are here now. We can make assessment now. We can see what's going on. When we generate tons and tons of waste that we don't even know what to do with, but we're throwing it in Africa. You want to talk about technology? Talk about e-waste. Talk about how many rivers are polluted because we dump thousands and thousands of tons of e-waste. We never ask the right question. So the development we're thinking about, or the recovery we're thinking about, has to be wiser, not just smart, wise. And wisdom comes from your life experience and your ancestors' life experience, collectively put together. Thank you.
I think I'm speechless by that powerful speech Your Highness has just delivered, questioning everything that we consider as development and forcing us to look inwards. But I think at the same time, it is also a big endorsement of the kind of work like what Ruma Devi has done, a change maker who has taken it upon herself to change her community and thereby send a powerful message to the entire world. Do we have any time for any more
Maybe
questions?
one last question.
Okay, one more question.
One question. We have a hand here.
Hello, very good afternoon to everyone. I'm Niharika Gogoi from Public Administration Department. I'm a research scholar here. My question is, as we all belong from the global south, as the Westerners' concept is that, and we all come from a conflict-driven areas, my question is how we all see conflict as a challenge to the ecology and environment in today's world. Because we put questions on, petroleum, and we put questions on felling of trees, but how far conflict within the communities or within the nations have impacted environment as a whole? Thank you.
Would you like to take any of you?
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for this question, and very important one. And I think Royal Highness Queen has already put a lot of importance on these, that how to balance that and how not to copy it. But I will just give you one, because in spite of all these things, we are in a connected world, and we have to continue balancing this. So to get many of those questions, in reality, the answer of what she has rightly raised is, there's a new documentary on Netflix, Buy More. And you can look at that, each word which he said, how the corporates have, now some of them have come on that documentary and feel conscious of doing that, yes, we did blunder. And this is where I think, while there will never be one solution for problems which are common in different parts of the world and will be same, it will be different solutions, and that's what is very important, right? And I think if I talk of this region, because I have had the opportunity to work in the developed nation half of my career, and at the same time trying to build infrastructure in this country which needs it. But I think as a balancing between development and ecology and all, we are sitting at a very good opportunity to teach the world other way around. The West having created the problem, as Royal Highness Queen has said, they are sitting at a very difficult situation because they have to first undo the thing and then redo the things, right? Whereas for us, not to be called a developed nation or whatever, forget about those West juggleries, but a nation which is young, a nation which is ambitious, a nation which is going to the world, and you have heard the very important and encouraging story of Ruma Deviji's, and I'm sure that her continued interaction with the young generation like you will create thousands of more Ruma Devi in this country, and that country needs it. But we have to also create infrastructure, because the infrastructure which we have today is not sufficient for 1.4 billion people. But we have the opportunity to create infrastructure, not like West, as Royal Highness Queen has said, but on a very responsible, sustainable way. And this ecological and development balance has to manage. And we will teach the world of doing it. I give you an example. We are sitting in this hall. We are sitting in Guwahati. This hall, whether it is in Paris, New York, and all, will be the same. You will have lights, you will have sound, you will all connected, we have all phones, everything has to work, and we have to do that. Where we can make a difference when we build thousands of these halls in the country, which country will need it? Because if you sit in a hall like this, in any that European Western country, probably you will find an energy consumption of close to about 150 units per square meter per year. Translate that into the amount of energy you will have to consume it, and the ecological climate impact of that energy to be produced in this. What we can do going forward is we will need these halls, we will need all these connected, we will all these be efficient. How can we build these halls which can consume 30 to 40 units per square meter per year? That is the technology you have to develop. That is the solutions you have to develop. I think stopping the development because, now there's a big climate thing, then another thing, will not be the solution. Finding a solution which will show to the world that, yes, we did the development, but we did the development in a sustainable and responsible way without impacting anything more in climate, instead of recovering it, which I said that this region has a huge potential of coming up with startups of carbon trading, carbon financing and all. That's what we have to do it. So there is definitely a balance which we have to create it. But at the same time, yes, the ecological balance between development and the growth has to continue on.
Supplementary question to you, if I may ask you one, sir. So how you see the EV policy in India? Is it a really sustainable policy that we are following in India as in relation to the third pole?
Yeah. Yesterday I have debated on this and put my point of views in the seminar. I think, look, EV policy, EVs are reality of the life. And yes, this is nothing else than that it creates some complexity, because EV is now a mobile electrical substation rather than a fixed substation. You have it here. Because in the day, probably everybody is in the Guwahati, afternoon or in the evening, you are going into this. So you have to say that your grids, your ecosystem is very important. So we'll have to, again, this is ecological balance of the thing. We have to do it. But charging an EV from a point where you are getting the power from a fossil fuel doesn't make EV policy to be impactful. You have to create those microgrids. You have to use the sustainable the energy made to then charge the EVs. That will make a difference. Sorry.
Yeah.
If I may just, again, because I come from Congo and we have a conflict zone in the east, and a conflict that's been going on for 30 years now, and it's a mineral conflict. So, yes, why we have conflict is because we have an issue with resources. We have an issue with the way resources is used and distributed among the people. This is the livelihood that, Doctor was talking about. How do we make sure that our people sitting on trillions of resources, because if you do not know, the richest country in the world is Congo in terms of natural mineral resources. And Congo is needed to do every single thing that you can imagine in terms of developing technologies or even building. So we have everything, copper, cobalt, all that you can imagine we have. And it would be easier to ask what we don't have, and it's very hard to find because we also have snow in Central Africa, in the Congo Basin. So the conflict minerals are fueled by an economic system that is called capitalism. So capitalism predicate is we have to win and earn more all the time. So there is no down. We have to keep going up and gain more and more and more. So I'm not here to make a criticism of, capitalism, but I'm here again to challenge you to say what other system could be in place so that we do not have this type of conflicts anymore, because it's about resources. And why do I have a conflict? Well, why do we have a conflict in the east of the Congo? Because the capitalist system requires that we pay the least possible to manufacture our goods so that we can sell them to the highest price and get the biggest benefit. And this is what's driving a lot of the conflicts around the world, is access to those resources and access to those resources at the least possible price. So sometimes it's cheaper to finance a conflict by those multinational, multi-international companies to finance conflicts, because you can get the raw material at a cheaper price in a chaos zone, rather than to deal with regulations of a country that is properly managing its resources. So behind those conflicts, it's not just people deciding to fight just to fight, is to understand what is building this conflict. What are the reasons why people are lacking access to their own resources? And this is, for me, one of the biggest challenge, again, as in terms I just mentioned before, in terms of development, because the policy or the politics behind the so-called development are also policies that continue to encourage plundering and world domination over some very small groups over other groups. So we have to get out of this. It's a jug under which we are. It's a mental jug under which we are. So we have to come out of that box, and this is where we do it. We do it with you, young people. Challenge. As Mr. Anil said, even in our creativity in terms of engineering, we have to be able to think outside the box. I'm not saying throw everything and just start, living the way our ancestors did. But our ancestors are still those who came up with those information that allows us to have this technology today. I said it before, without an African mind of several centuries ago, you would not be able to operate any computer, including your phone, because the binary code system comes from Africa. So if it came then from Africa, that means that today in the minds of Africans, despite the fact that we do not have enough access to education, but thank you for the scholarship that you offered, we will have now connection. We need to put ourselves together. We are the descendant of the civilization builders. They came here to get all these assets to build upon our heritage. So it's time we also do the same. And I'm sure that we will come up with the solutions, but without reconnecting to who you are, without aligning yourself with fundamental principle that nature is sacred, and you have to treat it with reverence. In your inventions, you will not take account of that factor. You will invent some absurd technology that will destroy the planet. If you want to be an amazing inventor, please be a spiritual. Be a person with good character. Be that. Connect with nature, because nature speaks also, and nature will inspire you so that you can invent things and you can organize your life according to those life principles that are encoded all over us, around us, in the mountains, in the water, in the plants. Today, there are great scientists doing work on water. But we always knew that water had a spirit. Sorry. We always knew it. We always knew that water could communicate. And now they are finding out that nature is a data bank. So reclaim your heritage, integrate it on your daily life, integrate it in your daily practice, integrate it in your work, and you will see that we can find better solution. I'm sure of that. Thank you.
So I think it is almost time to wrap up. It has been a lively discussion, but I'm glad you brought up the topic of conflict because third pole, we represent the most populous countries in the world, India and China, and our shared resources, water, has been projected to be the driver of the next world war. A data-driven analysis back in 2017 actually named the Brahmaputra and Ganga Valley as one of the likely places of a third world war among three other river valleys in the world. So Your Majesty has been very right. Water, indigenous people and local communities always considered water as sacred. And with water, all life is connected. I think we have understood a lot of paradigm shifts that we need to incorporate in our thinking moving forward. And I thank all the panelists for the great lively discussion. Over to the MC.
Well, as a member of the audience and sitting from the flank and as a teacher myself, I was listening to each and every word of deliberation, and it kind of, I think, brings us to understanding that we need to reassess and rethink and work on the definition of development. Because today, as we sit here, we had the opportunity to hear from Her Royal Highness. She comes from a continent which is considered as the place of birth, the cradle of birth, and us Indians belonging to a country which was known as the Sone ki Chiriya, or the golden bird. So today, when we are labeled as developing, yes, somewhere probably we have lost our way, but it is the correct time to move ahead where we can have a more sustainable growth and a more eco-conscious growth. And it was a wonderful panel discussion, and I, Dr. Arpi Saikia, take this opportunity to extend our gratitude to Her Royal Highness, Queen Diambi Kabatusila, invited speakers, and Honorable Chancellor Sir, today for this panel discussion, and we look forward to having you with us in future as well. Thank you so much, and have a great day. Thank you.